Do you want to have the level of dialogue with the agent, or how did you find the sort of communication?
I don't want to be having all that dialogue. The problem I have, again, going back to the fact that I'm a developer now, is they will come to me and tell me what the problem is.
Yeah.
They go and get their quotes. They come back to me and say, well, here's the quote for the repair. And I look at it and say, you've got to be having a laugh. I can get my plumber who's working on my development to do it at a third of the price. Now, I expect maybe it's going to be slightly more, but not 3 times as much. So then I say, leave it, I'll deal with it. So then I'm actually paying for the full maintenance and sorting it out myself.
It's quite difficult to keep finding new suppliers all the time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think they get to the point where they've got a team and they just kind of accept with whatever the quotes that are coming over, and they don't question them, or they don't.
Yeah.
And the people that are working those offices, the branch, actually it's not their responsibility to negotiate pricing with those suppliers. And so you end up with this constant battle. The feedback that I get from landlords is that they also don't really want the communication, but they fundamentally have to be involved in every process.
Yeah.
Because you need your authorization, or you to have viewed the price or accepted the price.
For me, is key. Is especially if it's a bigger piece of work that they've asked someone to do, they never go and check that they've done it properly.
Right.
So
there's no quality control as part of it.
So they go and do I had this with the property in Filton with a previous agent, which in fact was a culmination of some of these things that I had to move on from that agent. But they had the drains cleaned in a period of 6 months twice, and charged me back about £1,500 for cleaning the drains. And when I then questioned it, the first thing was, it shouldn't have to be done twice. If it's done the first time, you charge me. And then, oh no, it blocked again, so we had to get them back. It should be done once, and done once properly.
Right.
But they don't care, because they're charging it back to me. That business model doesn't work either. They're not motivated.
I think it's the accountability fundamentally. And this is one of the things I often say to landlords, is that, because we are fully outsourcing the property fundamentally, we pay the bills, we pay the maintenance, we accept all the risk. It's much more of a partnership, I think. We are accountable for the success of the project. The overall cost to manage it is ours, and therefore we're fully invested in the success of that. And at the end of the day, it's your problem. It's your house. Exactly. It's your cost. It's your carpet. It's your it's your drainage system, and they're just kind of.
We're almost. We're not on the same team.
No.
With the letting agent, and I felt that more and more. In fact, sometimes I would ring up one of the agents, and in fact, this is why I had to get rid of one of my other agents, was because I used to ring up and I used to be made to feel that I was being a pain in the ass. And you'd think, hold on a minute, I'm just asking some questions, and you would literally, and I actually gave that agent the feedback because they asked why I was not using them anymore. I said, well, because you make me feel like I'm a difficult customer. And I'm not. I'm just trying to check a few things, which a landlord has to do as part of your kind of responsibilities. So
let's talk about the offer and that process, right? So how did that work, and what did you think of that?
Yeah, so I had to think about, for me, what sort of return I wanted to get from this property. I also was, obviously, because I'm quite close to the figures, I also knew what my net figure was. So obviously I get a gross rental, but all the other stuff comes off the bottom of that. And I also compared it against market value in this area. So I think, did I propose a rent to you? And I think you went away to
so I think you had. So you gave me a couple. So you'd had some other agents over, and so I think I asked kind of what sort of level they were looking at pricing it, and you were quite open about that. And were you happy with because I think there's probably a perception from other landlords that we are looking to undercut the market rate. How did that stack up? Were you happy with the level, or how did that work? I think
the only thing we changed was, I think you proposed a 5-year contract. And I said no, 3 years, because after 3 years I would want to review the rent.
Sure.
But the rent that we agreed was absolutely fine. It was
in line with what other people were offering in the market.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We agreed the contracts, and that all happened pretty quick, right? That was
about a week.
About a week, start to finish. But that was such good timing. I was saying to you earlier that actually there's normally a slightly longer lead time. There's normally a month or 2 months as people are ending tenancies or moving house or doing whatever, right? Because we work with all sorts of different landlords. It's not just, I suppose, portfolio landlords. It's kind of, I've got accidental landlords and people that just need to, moving house, moving to a different country, or changing jobs, moving cities, and they want to keep their investment portfolio.
Yeah.
So once we did that, I sent over the contract. Did you have any thoughts or comments about the actual management agreement? So what we do, just to explain, I suppose, so we have a management agreement. It's not a AST contract because we're not a tenant, fundamentally. It's quite similar to what you would get from an agent, I would say. It kind of covers our responsibilities in terms of what we do on the property and what you do have responsible, what you're responsible on the property. And then the term and the fee and the length of the contract and stuff.
Yeah.
But what did you think of the actual agreement? Was there anything in there that you were surprised by, or
Not at all.
Really?
It was very straightforward. It was very clear. There was no hidden clauses or anything like that. I mean, we spoke about anyway beforehand. I think when we were chatting before that, something around, if there's something structural, obviously it would be my responsibility. If it was just normal wear and tear and small repairs, that was your responsibility. I was very clear on my areas of responsibility.
So we sent that over online. You signed it, and then the next day we paid the deposit, which is
you paid straight away, which was like a breath of fresh air. And in fact, that's the other point I have to say. You do pay on the first of the month, regardless of whether it's a bank holiday. Because
it's just on direct debit.
Exactly. Yet for a letting agent, this seems to be the hardest thing in the world. I get paid up to 2 weeks late because of bank holidays and processing problems. And but that is, I think most landlords will find that, you've got a set day where you're supposed to be paid, and they'll say, oh yeah, the tenants haven't paid yet. Well, are you chasing them? Yes, we'll chase them now. It's kind of, I don't know. Again, it's another one of those things they're not motivated to do. They seem to forget, but I've got a mortgage as well.
Yeah, of course, right.
So that's a real plus as well, the fact that I get it on that day every month, and there's no discrepancy. That's a real positive for me.
Good. Pleased. At least my bank's not sending it 2 weeks late.
Absolutely. And there's not that, again, stress in your mind. Oh, what day am I going to be getting the rent this month?
Yeah, and do you know what? I'm a landlord myself. Right? I've got my own investment, portfolio. The biggest problem I get on that, and it does stress you out a little bit, is tenants not paying you, or they're late on rent and stuff, and you've got to find out which one it was and chase it. And so every beginning of the month, I am thinking, right, has everyone paid me? Yeah, it's in the back of your head. When again, it's something you shouldn't have to think about, right? It should just happen.
And the other thing that they do as well is, say for this property where you're letting it to a couple, where you'd think you'd get the full amount on the day that the rent's due. Sometimes you just get half because they've allowed them to pay it separately. And I've said, I'm renting a house, I'm not renting to 2 people. Oh no, well, we can't stipulate that, apparently. So, sorry, you just have to wait for your rent. It's just things like that where you think...
And that multiplies over the number of properties as well, right? It's, all these things.
So I've got a 4-bedroom. If they all paid at separate times,
which
is what I did stipulate with the 4-bedroom that I have rented out, I've said I want the rent one amount or one day. I don't want 4 separate payments.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I picked the keys up 7 days later.
I think we agreed before that. Sorry, we agreed some
works that needed. So that's a really good point actually, because for the model to be used, so you can see the properties, they've all got to be in reasonably good condition. The main things that I always kind of talk about are the bathrooms and kitchens, right? Those are the kind of problem areas that, for me, they have to be attractive online fundamentally, because we sell them in the online travel agencies like Booking.com, Airbnb, and those, and also on our direct corporate site ourselves. And it's the pictures that sells it fundamentally, right? So, and if you're not going to get bookings online, then that would be a challenge. So, what kind of things did we agree that needed to be done to get it up to speed?
I mean, obviously, like I said, I was having it painted anyway, because that needs to be done. I think we agreed that
So the holy carpet, they needed to go. The cover carpet, they came back.
They came back, and
that was good.
They did that, so that's absolutely fine. I think we agreed new flooring in the bathroom and the kitchen.
Yeah, so we put some new click vinyl tiles in just because it was a little bit dated.
Yeah.
I think I think the main things are the work units and the work surfaces. The appliances, like, flooring, if it's not kind of already tiled, it's quite so easy and cheap to replace. I think it was like £100 to do both, so it doesn't cost anything, but it really brightens the place up straight away. And then there was a bit of tiling around the splashback.
And in the kitchen.
And
that did make a big difference.
It did make a big
difference. The colour of those tiles, I must admit. Yeah,
it did, yeah. So we had these kind of red paint and tiles, which were a bit 1990s, weren't they? So we got rid of those and just put like fresh white ones in, and the whole kitchen looks. And then obviously had it cleaned and everything, right?
Yeah.
We replaced the hob because. No, we didn't. We replaced the oven because the oven was a bit battered on the inside. Yeah. But the hob we kept, didn't we? Because I think we were going to have to. I would have normally put electric or convection ones in now.
Yeah.
But the you'd have to change it from gas, and it was started to become a bit of a pain, and it wasn't that bad. Not really, no. So that and how do we do that? So I paid for all of that, right? And then we agreed a budget, and I claimed it back from you.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So the way in which we normally look to do that is, if it's fairly minor stuff, like even a bit of painting, I will normally fund that and soak up some of it as part of the project, and I'll look to do that. Depending on what needs doing, if it was just like one carpet, 60 or 70 quid, I'm not going to argue about it, just get it done. As long as, I'll get you to sign it off or whatever, but I'll just go and do it. If it's slightly more than that, then I would look to agree a budget up front and say, this is how much it's going to cost roughly, and then go and get the work done and do it for you. I think we do sometimes get landlords that have bigger refurbishment projects where it definitely needs a new, like we're taking one on near Eastville Park, which is a 4-bedroom HMO at the moment. We're going to turn that back into serviced accommodation as well. But it's a gut job. It needs new kitchens, 3 new bathrooms.
So will you project manage that?
I will help and use our contractors. Yeah. But they will fund it.
Yes. Yeah. Which is fair enough, isn't it?
Yeah, and there is sometimes I haven't really done. I've done this once, but it depends on the landlord's circumstance. I could potentially also work with them on the basis that I would buy it later and then maybe fund the works if they wanted to. But it really depends on the scenario. Obviously, that wasn't something for you.
It wasn't a huge amount of money, and what was more important to me was that you project managed those bits of refurb because I was busy doing the development. And
it's been done to a nice standard, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the. Yeah. What did you think of? So that took about a week end to end, didn't it?
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah.
What do you think of the result afterwards in terms of what it was like and what it's like now?
I mean, I think definitely it's an improvement in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And it's kind of just brought it back up to spec, hasn't it, really? I don't think it was a bad property before.
No, but I suppose the furnishing and...
Oh, yes, the furniture. Yeah, well, obviously I used to rent it unfurnished, so the last time I was in here, it was full of the tenants' furniture.
Stuff, yeah.
So that's a bit hard to say. But I think, you've made it a very attractive Airbnb property. Yeah. It's the sort of place that I could imagine that if I was going on a city break.
Here for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely fine, yeah.
How did you feel about service accommodation when we first met?
Well, it's funny because I was talking to another developer about this actually probably a few months ago, and he was saying that the problem is you don't know what they're going to be getting up to in your property. They could be growing marijuana or anything like that upstairs, or or having parties or whatever. You don't know what they're doing with your property. And my thought was, look, if they want to make money from it, there's no point growing all sorts upstairs. They want to be turning that property over. This location is not for party animals anyway, really, is it? No one's going to. It's going to be Gloucester Road or something nearer to town. It's not going to be here.
I say that a lot. So firstly, specifically this property, I don't think it would be necessarily that sort of environment. We did, we just had Love Saves the Day, right? Didn't we? And we did have people that were attending for that event right, during there. But even there, so your concerns were there was going to be turned into some sort of party. You've seen the news articles where some lad goes online, invites 7,000 people to a one-bed flat, and then it all gets out of hand, and the police get told, and has that happened?
Not that I know of, Fraser. I've not heard anything.
But you would hear from the neighbours, right?
Yeah, and I own the property next door, so they would have complained.
And they would have complained about it as well. But also we put security systems in the property as well, so we monitor noise and we monitor sound and stuff.
And also, obviously, this is the first time I've been back to the property since you took it over. Oh. It's all up to spec. So
it looks exactly the same, right?
Yeah. It probably looks slightly better than last time I came in. But so I would see evidence of it.
I obviously give it a bit of a tidy before you came out. Party flat. So what I say to landlords about this is that there is a lot of kind of media. It is a misconception. People do sometimes cause noise issues. Things sometimes get damaged, but it's no different than if you had a tenant. Yeah. Fundamentally, if you get the wrong tenant, they will have parties. They will cause noise disturbances, and those things are like much bigger issues than somebody comes here. Because as soon as they turn the music up, I get notified and I ask them to turn it down. Yeah. Right, which is a bit kind of Big Brother, but like bit of a party pooper. Yeah. But that happens. But when you're kind of a single let, your neighbours start to get upset with you. They don't do the bins. You've got the teenager who lives upstairs who plays his drum kit at like 3 a.m. Yeah. It's kind of those things you just don't get where you got short tickets. They're only here for like one night or two nights, right? Yeah. So I my experience, 18 months, we just haven't had those sort of issues really. Were there any other concerns about it being SA?
About it being, more on your part. As I said before, I was a little bit dubious. Will you be able to rent it enough to be able to cover? Yeah. Right. So I was which is why I always ask you, how's it going? Are you renting it? So that was my other concern. Can he make it work? Yeah. But you seem to have done the figures and they've stacked up and it's worked. So you obviously know your figures.
So we're like, so we're 96% booked across the entire portfolio. This one's a little bit. It actually does get booked, but it gets booked much later. Yeah. So and during the week is a little bit quieter. But we built in a level of tolerance into that so that we wouldn't have those, issues fundamentally. But there's so much demand for us in Bristol right now that I don't think that's a mega issue. Yeah. But it's interesting to hear that what about anything? Any other concerns about it or
no? Not really, because I understood what service accommodation was, and I kind of think that Bristol is a great city for service accommodation. You get so many visitors. So
okay, so that's that's the use case. So once we're done the refurb, what kind of comes next, I suppose? So guests start moving in, and then you're kind of into like management mode. Yeah. Then for the next 3, so we signed with a 3-year contract. How long have we been doing this now? So we're 6 months in.
4 months, I think, isn't it?
No, Jan we did it.
Is it? So we're now June, so 6 months.
6 months in, yeah. How do you feel about the experience in the 6 months?
Well,
in runtime, I suppose, not the getting going.
Certainly, it was really nice having someone else having to fix the fence in the winter.
Do you remember I told you literally as soon as the very first guest came in, and the bath hadn't been plumbed in? And the water had started coming through the ceiling.
Yeah. What was that about?
I have no idea. I still don't understand how that would even happen, to be honest. But
I don't.
Yeah, it wasn't a big deal. We just tried it out and repainted.
But there's been a couple of things that you've said, and you've said anyway. I've sorted it, and I remember thinking, oh, thank God. That's so nice. That's just so nice. Sometimes I don't want to open my emails from letting agents because I think, oh God, they're going to want some more money off me for some other repair. You almost dread it and think, oh, I'll open it later.
I just call you for a chat.
Oh, and by the way, so it is a refresh. That's really nice. That's the major thing is no stress. Yeah, I mean, it's very simple. It's not about the money. It's not about the time. It's the stress factor. And I think a lot of landlords would identify with that, because the money, you can pay the money, the time you can spend the time, but stress, it follows you around, and it's something there all the time. So I think the lack of stress on this property is probably the major thing.
So how many times have I called you in the last 6 months where there's been issues, I suppose?
I think it was twice, wasn't it? One was something to do with the freezer. You couldn't find a switch or something.
Yeah, I didn't know where the switch was for the, so I don't know how, it had just been turned off. So there's the plugs behind the freezer.
It was the plug.
Yeah, it was literally, but it was built in behind the unit, so we had to kind of take the housing off.
And I think another thing about a plug somewhere, it's just things that you don't know where they are because it's a new property. That's
but
there was nothing else.
But there's not been any, because this is kind of what I say to to landlords, is that I feel bad for agents sometimes, because the tenant, and hoping there probably aren't lots of tenants listening to this, but but I think, unfortunately, all of the processes and all of the kind of issues that you get, which inevitably kind of roll downhill, are because there are tenants involved in those processes, right? So if you think about like the life cycle of like how an agent works, from finding tenants to referencing them to interviewing them to to viewing and all of that, all of those processes right through the life cycle, we don't have any of those.
No.
Right? They just don't exist, right? So I don't have those problems, which means that you don't have those problems fundamentally,
that's true.
right? And we have different problems. We have, I can't find the keys, and the guy, the three ladies that have just come around and left fake tan all over the bedding and stuff like that, right? But that's not your problem.
No.
Right? That's me.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that massively simplifies everything.
It's true, because with this one, they had let it. We'd gone through the first round of letting with the existing agent, and then they go through and do the affordability checks. Yeah. And something got flagged, and I said, I'm a bit uncomfortable. Oh no, it'd be fine. And that carried on for about 2 or 3 weeks. So I thought I had let it. So you've got this sort of lead time where the property is vacant, so you're not collecting rent, and then they're processing it, doing the affordability, doing the credit checks, all this sort of thing, referencing. So that takes about 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah.
So that's that's all void as well, right? That's void. So what percentage is that?
Well, that could potentially,
maybe a bit less, 8%, 7%. I think the average is actually 7. Is 5.
They are supposed, up to now, they have managed to line it up fairly well. But if something goes wrong in that process, and so they have to go back to square one, then you get a void. And that's what happened with mine. It should have lined up so that the tenants moved out a week later, new tenants in. But the new tenants started to fail some of those checks. They still tried to push it through. And then I had to say, no. They can't afford it. It's quite clear to me they can't afford it. You can manipulate the figures how you want, but I think we should say no and let's start again. They didn't want to do that. They wanted to try and push it through, and that led to a void, which is when then,
And that's becoming more and more common, right? So, I think the whole evictions issue at the moment is, especially kind of during lockdown, I've got a couple of other developers that I work with. One that got stung for nearly 8 months.
Yeah. Well, I had half rent being paid in this one. They decided that one of the ladies was furloughed.
Yeah.
They didn't ask for any proof of furlough or anything. They just took her at her word. They said, I'm going to pay you. She said, I therefore can only pay you half the rent. So she's getting 80% of her wage, but she's paying me 50% of the rent. That doesn't make sense.
Scandal, isn't it?
And so, but because of COVID, you have to just agree with it. And then so for 6-8 months, I had half the rent coming through from one of the tenants. And then they didn't chase it up to say, well, when are you going to go back and repay and, go back to full rent, all this sort of stuff. And then, the whole impact on...
But you're not had to evict anybody and doing... even that process... But that's you're not seeing that money again, are you? Fundamentally. No. And it's thousands and thousands of pounds. Yeah. I think, another colleague, it was something like £10,000 all in.
Yeah, I know some
people lost. And then that's if the place is in a good condition when you leave, right? So, and that, I think that is a risk that we swallow that cannot be underestimated. We don't swallow it really because it doesn't really exist.
It doesn't exist
as a
and I
as a risk
quite
to me.
Like that, because having been on the other side of it and thinking, well, I can't really even evict these tenants. You then start to realise as a landlord, you're actually quite vulnerable. You could have people living in your property, not paying rent for months and months and months, and not having any legislation behind you that's going to support you. Yeah. And I really didn't like being in that
I think the legislation is so tenant-centric now that it's very, very difficult, especially if you'll be doing everything in limited company and with the tax benefits and stuff of doing that, right? But I don't understand how anybody, who's got one property as a single let that's managed through an agent, that's on reasonable, a reasonable tax bracket, whether they actually make anything at all, to be honest.
Only if they bought the property in cash.
Maybe, yeah.
And they bought it a long time ago.
But that's not a great investment
strategy, is it? No, definitely not.
And so you're actually losing money, and then you've got to accept all the risk, on top of that. You're actually paying for that investment fundamentally. It's not, it's definitely not high yielding strategy if you're that sort of landlord. No. That would worry the hell out of me.
Yeah, but again, that's part of the stress thing, isn't
relief,
it?
Yeah.
At least I don't have to worry about. I think my biggest fear was having tenants in a property not paying and me not being able to evict.
Right.
You're just stuck, aren't you?
And now, so from our perspective, we don't have that because, the guests are already there for such a short time. And if they are problem guests, we could just ask them to leave. Yeah. That's the reality. Now, that's never happened. Right. Yeah. But I don't lose any sleep about it.
No.
At all. Can we talk about numbers?
Yep.
Yeah, going back to typically on a lot of our marketing materials that we save people at least 15%. And the reason I say that as just a baseline number, I think it's more than that. Yeah. But I think the reason I say that is because most letting agent fees to do a fully managed service are somewhere between sort of 10 and 15% anyway. Yeah. And then, on top of that, there's the extra sort of one-off costs, like you were saying about tenant finding fees and referencing fees and contracting fees and all of that. Yeah. And then, but on top of that, then you've got, maintenance. Yeah. Right. So if anything goes wrong, you're paying for it fundamentally. Yeah. Right. And voids. Right. So that's generally how I try and come up with that claim. Yeah. I'm thinking about being even a bit more bolshy with my claim and saying that if I don't save landlords that, I will give them £1,000. So that's quite a
I mean, it depends.
So what happened with your numbers?
So with my numbers, so you're right. I save about, I was paying lower management fees because I have multiple properties. Right. But most people would be paying 12%. I pay 8%.
Okay.
And then on top of that, if you add on top of that the sort of new tenant finding fees, inventory, and then if you add on top of that the maintenance and repair bills, which again I feel are slightly inflated. Yeah. I think when I added it up, I was actually saving between 22 and 25%.
Right. Okay.
On the costs.
And do you know what that total figure was over the 3 years?
Yeah. So it would have been, I think it was 2,232. It's about 3,500
per year, or in total?
Per year.
Per year.
Yeah.
So 10,500 pounds. Is that kind of where you were?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a lot of money on a 1-2-bed house in Kingswood, right?
I made in 2020 during COVID, when I was getting half rent, I didn't make a lot of money on this property because I wasn't even getting the full rent.
So that's a big. If you've got 5 properties or 10 properties, or that really adds up.
Yeah, it does. Definitely.
That's a massive saving. Yeah. That's actually really good to hear, right? Because that's how I pictured it. Yeah. But it sounds better when it comes from.
Well, there's a lot of there's a lot of hidden costs that they're not obvious to you at the time. Like I said, there's the tenant finding fees. Well, it depends. If you've got a 3-year tenancy, you don't kind of notice that because for the 3 years you don't have that tenancy. But once you do have to swap over to new tenants, that hits you that year. Yeah. The other thing with the repairs and maintenance as well is often you will go for 2 or 3 years, but then when you've got to change the tenants, you've got to do a complete repaint, and that could be £1,000 £1,500.
Yeah.
New carpets, So these costs come in lumps as opposed to regularly every month. So you kind of got to take the costs over a 3-year period and then average it out.
I know how, you've told me about your zero integration and how you kind of get all this kind of lined up. But you are super diligent about making sure that you count all of these costs. As an ex-FD, you really understand those numbers, right? So it's actually great to hear, because I think it's almost like, it's such a passive cost that I think people just forget that they're spending £10,000 for that service. And it makes a massive
especially
difference.
when you do multiply it up. So in a year, someone might say, "Okay, that's fair enough."
£300 a month.
Yeah, at least someone's doing it for me. And when there's no alternative, okay, so you just got to kind of suck it up, haven't you? But if there is an alternative, that's where you're looking to maximise your income.
Can I ask you a question with your developer hat on as well? Because they're slightly different roles, I suppose. But so one of the kind of target markets that we kind of got 3 different kind of personas of people that we like to speak to, right? One is kind of your standard landlord with the additional residential property. One is a kind of portfolio landlord, so it's their professional business, right? They've got a bunch of houses. And the other is kind of developers, and we love working with developers because obviously the houses are brand new fundamentally, and so that they're up to a certain sort of standard. You're not going to have to go and rip out a kitchen and do that sort of work before. With your developer hat on, how much do you spend furnishing places? Do you keep all of yours?
Yeah,
you do. Yeah. So the ones that you keep, do you furnish them when you?
Yeah, I only put white goods in.
Right.
Into the kitchen, but that's about it. I don't put beds and sofas.
But are they all quite small resident? Do you do any sort of larger plot ones where you've got a block and you do photos and almost like a sales catalog?
No, I only do sort of individual properties.
Because that's one of the things that I think gets forgotten as well. And a lot of
the marketing costs.
Yeah, the marketing costs. Yeah, it's quite significant. So photography. Either you're kind of hiring furniture just for the photos, right? And that costs sort of between £2,000 and £3,000 per property to do that. If you've got 10, that's quite a significant cost, that you've got to deliver. Or you can buy it, but you can't use the same furniture in the marketing photos for for 5 different developments, can you? You've got to kind of change it. Then you've got to store it. Then you've got to put it together. Then you've got to lug it about,
move it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's quite. I was just wondered if you had thought about that, or.
Well, I never sell my properties, so I'd never dress them. So when I'm renting them, obviously the letting agent is coming in and doing the photos and the filming kind of thing. And that's up to them, because if they don't, it's not up to them actually, which I found out recently with one of my other properties in Kingswood, the one that's just been
What do you
done.
mean?
Well, he came and did a film.
Yeah.
We had fun and games with that one as well, because they were marketing it as a 4-bedroom HMO.
Yeah.
I'd agreed a rent that I wanted to put it on. So it's a big I think you've seen it. It's a big 4-bedroom.
The one in Kingswood.
Yeah. It's a big 4-bedroom.
Is that the one that's already gone, or the one that's coming?
The one that's already gone.
Yeah.
So I put that on with an agent. They came and did the filming, and the filming was just awful. They'd sent it in on. There's a garage. It's on a main road, and there's a garage opposite, and they just took this clippage of the window, and you could just see the garage outside. They just focused on this window and this garage. But it was the letting agent that was doing the filming. It wasn't like they were
a professional.
The photos were fine, but with that one, that's a bit of a long story. I can't go into it. But anyway, in the end, I ended up letting that one for lower than the price that I wanted, and that was because their lead generation system wasn't working. So they kept ringing me up saying, well, this price, we'll have to drop the price because we've had no leads at all. So we dropped it again, no leads at all. So we dropped it again, and she said, still no leads. I said, not one single phone call or email,
That's
nothing.
Crazy.
And I said, this is mad. This can't be right. She said,
well, I would suggest... strong the market at the moment as
and
well.
Then she said, well, what we'd recommend is you spend some money to fully furnish it, because that will make it more attractive. And I said, what, to spend a couple of grand on getting 4 beds, furniture. So I rang the number for the agent that was on the Rightmove advert, and it wasn't going through. No, you laugh. Right? So I rang them up and said, look, it's not going through. Yeah, it's working fine. And she said, and anyway, we'd have got emails. So anyway, I spoke to the sales manager, and he then got back to me and said, yes, sorry, our lead generation wasn't working properly. So I dropped the rent, and then by then, as soon as that they sorted that out, it rented the next day. So clearly the rent was too low, but they'd secured it at that.
That is terrible.
So I probably lost out again about 10% on the rent. But, you know, that's where you are.
Are we allowed to name and shame? No.
They've gone very quiet. They're fine now at the moment. But it's just that you're there to rent it out at the best rent, and you can't even get your lead generation system working.
That is poor, isn't it?
They won't be getting a second one,
Well, no. So you want to go to Julian Priest Photography. He's our videographer, official videographer. Well, he's obviously not doing this at the moment, is he?
Oh, hello, Julian.
Hello, Julian. So Jules does all the professional photography and videos for our houses, and they look great. Yeah. And it does make a big difference.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So go and check them out. Did you spend a lot of time managing this place?
I didn't. To be fair, I didn't, because I refused to, because I'm paying a full management contract fee. So my time was purely taking calls from the agent. I never got involved in any of the... Well, I did actually. That's a lie. I had to get the new carpet put in here. That's right. So I had to go and find the carpet supplier. I had arranged for them to coordinate with the tenants in here, and then they came and fitted the carpet. And then obviously I had to call them back when they had to repair the hole that they'd left there and things like that. So yeah, that the carpet I did, only because I thought, well, again, they're not going to be motivated to get the best deal, so it's best for me. And it's if it's a larger type item, I would generally try and get more involved, because I just know they're going to charge me 3 times as much. So
I think if it's your full-time job as because you do other things fundamentally as well, right? So you've allocated a little chunk of it. I kind of took. So I'm starting to kind of think about time and landlords, and like you spend like 30% of your time working, roughly. Yeah. And how much of that would you get back if you kind of actually just completely outsourced all of your properties fundamentally? And I think it would be quite a big chunk, of that 30%, maybe a third of your day, or up to half of your day if you had a big portfolio.
What, if you managed it yourself?
Instead of managing it all yourself, right? I think.
So sorry, if you went from managing it yourself to service accommodation, or to
just completely outsourcing it as serviced accommodation,
you get most of your time back.
Yeah, so I think that's a massive saving. Yeah, and it's kind of how much do you value your own time? I suppose is kind of the the question, and also how much do you want to pay yourself? Right?
And exactly. And
it's quite hard to work out the ROI.
I don't want to be driving around my properties all day. I've got other things to do. But other people might say I haven't got other things to do.
Well, even me, now I've started to, we started to obviously grow. We're starting to put in-source some of our team. So our cleaning, our laundry, we're finally getting rid of, which I'm quite pleased about. Our maintenance. Actually, every time I can get rid of some of that. Yeah. I can actually do the bit that I like doing, which is going out and speaking to go and speak to landlords and doing viewings and stuff, right? Which is the fun.
But that's probably the same for me and you. We're both kind of business owners, so we value our time at more than £10 an hour, which is what you pay a cleaner or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't want to be doing the cleaning, because I can earn more per hour than £10 an hour doing what I'm good at.
Absolutely.
But other people might think, well, I'm not going to do all those other things, so why not? But
still, I'd rather go and play golf. Even if
I guess everyone's different.
Yeah. Or anything.
But anyone that's kind of sat there thinking, well, I work as in a job and I get paid 50 quid an hour. Why would they then want to be spending time on their property, which you could outsource for £10 an hour?
I suppose to be fair, I say that, but then this morning I was over at one of our properties doing some minor painting and stuff like that to get it ready.
But that's because that's cheaper than getting someone in and.
To be honest, it was actually not cheaper. It was quicker. Yeah. The I couldn't give them much notice. It's not like I booked it in and showed all it, so I had to like kind of just, if I wanted it done today, so just I could rent it tomorrow, I just got over and did it. It's fine. But it's the same thing, right? It's the same sort of.
And I think as a landlord, if you're doing it yourself, it tends to be a little bit reactionary anyway.
Yeah.
Because if there's a problem, you have to go out and see what it is, and by the time you've done that, and it's not worth then handing it over to someone else. And by the end, I mean, when I've done quite a lot on the student property when I was sort of getting involved in that, and you could spend a lot of time in the week just faffing around, getting quotes, looking to see what the repairs are, managing it, getting the odd bits of materials, and the time just goes before you know it.
They even know my face at Screwfix now, which I was kind of quite. I'm in the gang. So, okay, so kind of final dreaded question is, I suppose, would you work with us again? And what do you think about working with us as a whole? Yeah, so
definitely. I mean, I have another property, as you know, which will be ready. What did I say? Originally, was it July?
No, it was April.
That was very optimistic. So I think, 1st of September.
Yeah.
We're aiming for 1st of September now.
It was June last week.
Was it?
So, but there's another one that you're looking to work with us on.
Yeah. And I think I would never go full service accommodation, but that's a personal preference of me.
Just in terms of managing risk? Or?
Yeah, managing risk. I would want it slightly diversified, because if all of it was service accommodation and we got hit with something like COVID again, I wouldn't want to be in a position where potentially all of it could go.
Right.
But at the same time, having COVID brought its own set of risks for AST anyway, because like we saw, you're down to half rent and things like this,
But the thing is, so just to talk about that, I suppose, that again, that's one of the. It was never an issue before we had COVID, right? But now people think, and we got monkeypox and other stuff, and you're like, oh god, is everyone just being a bit sensitive about this?
Yeah, I'm sure in a few years' time the whole thing, we'll be back to normal. I'm just extra cautious at the moment.
I completely understand that. I think the thing that I would say about that is that we, as part of our contract, we actually can revert it as a single let. So if in the event that another COVID did strike, we can effectively hire a tenant.
And of course, my contract's with you, and you've guaranteed that rent, haven't you? So
absolutely. So it doesn't
so
really matter. But how I would manage that in the background is by converting it to a single let contract.
Right. Okay.
Right. So there might be a month where or 2 months where we were struggling with the numbers.
Yeah.
But long term, I don't think that will happen again because of that. So we try and manage that risk ourselves. Right?
Yeah.
So it is something that I understand that landlords are concerned about. But generally you're happy.
Yeah.
And
happy,
you would you're looking to do other things with us as well.
Yeah.
And it's just say thanks for firstly coming and doing the interview. Really appreciate it because it is nice to hear it from other people. It's actually the best bit about my job, I think, is actually getting nice feedback.
Yeah.
I worked in City for ages, and you almost never got thanks. Do you know what I mean? It was kind of like, when you work at big companies, and they're not doing what they should be, and you can't really do much about it. It kind of feels like, oh god, and you're just getting bad news all the time. But actually, this is the nicest part of the job, actually speaking to landlords where you actually do help. And so, thank you for coming along and doing this. And I look forward to hearing about Kingswood and when it's ready to roll. And I know that you've referred us to some other landlords as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah,
massively appreciate that as well. Right. Thanks, Hayley.
Thank you.
Right.